Hungry Trilobyte podcast would like to start by acknowledging SoonerCon. Set sail once again for the high seas of Oklahoma's longest-running pop culture convention. A fun weekend awaits you full of cosplay, shopping, celebrity autographs, panels, and the after-hours events. Set up in the Embassy Suites in Norman, Oklahoma, you'll find a fantastic geeky weekend, June 19th through 21st, 2026. Visit SoonerCon.com for details. Welcome, everybody. Yes, this is the Hungry Trilobyte podcast, and if you've been paying attention, yes, you're right, it has been a little bit longer since our last episode than usual, and there's a good reason for that. I've been reshuffling some priorities, and although the show is going to keep coming out, and I've got some ideas for some really cool episodes coming up, I have another project that's brewing now that is going to take a little more of my time, and I think it's going to be worth it. No, I can't tell you everything right now, but I probably can tell you very soon, in the future, next Sunday AD. In the meantime, let's catch up with an old friend right now. Back today, we have Justin Koch, the creator of SWAT, which I'm eager to talk about that because last time we got together, you had just gotten the first issue rounded up, and now apparently you finished the full series.
Well, no. We went. The first issue is complete now. The first time we
Okay.
met, there was about 6 pages done. We finished it on Zoop, and then it's just been kind of a weird time between the tariffs and everything. So I'm just doing a little campaign over on Kickstarter just to get kind of SWAT introduced over there. We are close to finishing issue 2. We probably got a few pages left of the art and the lettering and stuff, but that one's pretty much in the can as well. So we're just offering issue 1. It's a real simple campaign. You can buy a PDF, you can buy a signed copy, you can buy a regular copy. There's not a lot of extra stuff. It's just, do you want the comic or not, right? So, but it's already completed. So the goal is $500. We're 30% done already. So it'll make, and you'll get your comic. Pretty sure.
Awesome. Then that's pretty darn cool. Now to recap, SWAT I think it's a disservice to call it a spoof of Harry Potter because it's more like it kind of takes the elements and then you're doing your own thing with it.
It's kind of, yeah. I mean, it starts that way in that, it definitely it uses. It's kind of like the Venture Brothers to, as the Venture Brother is to the Hanna-Barbera cartoons that it was kind of making fun of but loved at the same time. I'm kind of doing that with Harry Potter, although, I don't love it as much as, maybe I used to. But they're kind of symbols of the millennial experience, right? They're kind of, they open the comic and he's a busted up. Larry Slaughter is basically a guy who survived a school shooting that kind of ruined his life. And now he's a busted up detective in St. Louis, kind of counting down the days to his pension. Like What We Do in Shadows meets The Wire a little bit. But also there's a lot of Venture Brothers elements to it where it's silly, but it's also serious. It tries to ride that line pretty well.
We kind of derailed the conversation for a minute there, and I just kind of think maybe we shouldn't bury the lead on that. You said, well, I don't like it as much as I used to, or something to that effect. And, let me just kind of throw this out there, is that when you're doing what you do, you're making something entirely new out of familiar components. So it doesn't actually matter if you did like it, you do like it, you love it, you hate, because what's coming from it is something that's all Justin Koch. And that's
Yeah.
really cool. And we can do that with all sorts of media.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely is a new thing. It is not in any way, you do not need to care about Harry Potter or anything like that at all. In fact, it's probably better if you don't, because I am running roughshod over everything before too long. But at its core, it's really a story about Larry and Mimi, who is they've been fighting monsters together since they were teenagers, basically, and so they have a they really care about each other, and the relationship is intermittently romantic. But basically, the pressures of their job kind of have made it difficult. So that they're at the heart of the story, and then the first arc, which is 6 issues, is about them. It's sort of an introductory thing where we're setting up the world more than the monster's not that big of a deal long term, but they're put in a position where they're going to have to fire somebody on their team, and instead of doing that, they call in a tip on a monster to create a red ball, and so they end up spending 6 issues chasing this vampire, and that kicks off a series of events that would be hard to see coming, So they
Well, that's
probably would
pretty
have just
cool.
let Tiny Tim get fired if they'd known, you know. So
And I love how it's a supernatural story, but it has like hints of an action series versus corporate America dash thrown in there. And
the themes, one of the themes is I wrote it feeling very frustrated with kind of everything. And I think if people are more frustrated now than they were when I wrote it. So the national mood is definitely in the SWAT kind of captures the national mood, I think, of just sort of frustration at all these systems that don't quite work. They're not quite what they're supposed to be. Um, and so there is an element of that for sure.
that's a big deal for sure. And I'm glad you're writing to that. And maybe the timing on this is just right, maybe for all the wrong reasons. Because you're right, we're all kind of frustrated.
Yeah, I feel. I mean, yeah, the drive behind SWAT is sort of like, how do you live in this really imperfect world, and how do you be a halfway decent human when it can be very hard to do that. Now, granted, they're in an ultra violent position where they're constantly, living in terror and stuff, and so their situations are quite a bit more brutal than most people's. But that's why it's a comic, right? So, um, but yeah, I mean, it's it's getting really dark, but it's also very funny. I mean, because I found that, and I enjoy this kind of thing too. But people that work in first responders and stuff like that can often have a very dark sense of humor because that's how they process. I'm going to have to stay in. I'm here. I have to do this, no matter how horrible it is. Let's crack a joke about it, and that's where the comedy really comes from. Is the characters talking to each other, and not how absurd the situation is necessarily. Although that happens too sometimes. But the situations are usually horrible, and they cope with it with the comedy.
And that's a very human thing, and it's a weirdly human thing because you don't see lions and tigers and bears responding to stress by laughing. We
Yeah.
do that. We understand the situation is absurd, and we have a specific response to that, which no other animal has.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I hadn't thought about it in that angle, but it is definitely an interesting thing. The trauma response that you have of sort of trying to, I guess it kind of makes it dealable, right? If you can laugh at it, you can handle it. Um, and so they use that a lot to sort of keep going in a situation that is becomes increasingly stressful for them. It never any daylight they have is it's a false dawn, for most of the bulk of the run. So they have to cope with a lot of stuff, and they use comedy to do that. And the team itself is, there's Tiny Tim, who's about this tall, and he's kind of, he's not the smartest guy, but he's cool. There's Mabelina. She's a fake psychic, or she thinks she's a fake psychic, but she's a real psychic, but she always makes the wrong decision. But ultimately, they all like, and they all care about. They don't all take a bullet for each other. Even when they bitch at each other, and maybe are a little thoughtless. They deeply care about each other, and that's what kind of gets them through the situations that they're in. Is that they're genuinely a team.
Mhm.
So
And that's something I think our audience is really going to respond to because in this world where we're all frustrated and we all see things not working the way they should, a lot of us have had the experience of not being able to count on the people we call family or the people we call our neighbors, our physical neighbors. And we find a community
maybe online, maybe in our social group that are people that we can count on, people we will take a bullet for, and sometimes we bust their ass a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, and as much as dark as it is, I think it has a good heart. Uh, and it's just interacting with this messed up world, and they're struggling to find a way. I don't know if you've read issue one um, all the way through, but there's a part where Mimi is talking about how they collaborate with evil, and that makes them not good, and it's about them finding a way to feel like they're decent people again, and struggle through this moral ambiguity and find something where they can kind of feel like they've done something good. Man, I am not making it sound very much fun,
No,
but it's
no,
really fun. It's also a lot of fun. It's fast moving. The dialogue pops. It's not a morose, contemplation at all. So
I'm a big Buffy the Vampire Slayer fan, so something where people are dealing with extremely grisly situations, but they're managing to find a lot of humor in it, possibly cavalier humor.
yeah,
I dig
definitely.
that.
Okay. Yeah, that's another good comparison, I guess. Um, the Venture Brothers thing. Somebody this last week on another podcast brought that up, and I was like, yes, that's it. Um, but yeah, Buffy, yeah, it plays with a lot of the tropes of supernatural horror comedy, but it plays with them in ways that I don't want to get too into spoiler wise, but it's never quite the standard, and I usually think I make it a little bit more interesting.
Mhm.
Um, so there's always twists and turns. You never quite understand what's going to happen. You think you do, but I love messing with you. So my goal, what I love to do, is have these perspective shifts where something happens and you go, that changes my entire take on everything that's happened. Um, so I love my twists, I guess.
And
But
I don't want to. Sorry,
go
go ahead.
ahead. No, no,
I don't want to get into spoilers. That's not what I do.
no.
But so I'll say something that is not part of the story because that gives me some freedom there. But last week, there were some particularly heavy news stories. Won't specify which ones, but it's like you woke up that morning and the world did not seem like a good place. Was
Yeah.
driving through town on the interstate doing 70 miles an hour, and I saw a hearse get rear-ended.
Mm,
And I just said to myself, there's no way that dude's day can get any worse.
yeah. Yeah.
Uh, And that's just the
Yeah.
situation you find yourself in. It's like,
Well, this isn't a fun one, but well, I don't even want to get in. Well, a couple weeks ago, I was at a restaurant, and we're on a patio, and I'm looking up at something on the car, this really high car garage. Uh, you know what? Well, I've already started, but it was there for like an hour, and I kept like it kept attracting my attention. This is not a happy story, but and I kept trying to figure out what it was, and eventually I was like, oh, it's a cardboard cutout that somebody's tied to the fence. No, it was a jumper, and
yeah,
they let go while I was staring right at them. And we were flipping out, and then nobody in the restaurant gave a crap. Like nobody asked what was happening. No one cared. The waitress was kind of acting like she was confused when I wanted to leave. It was just like it was almost like that was more disconcerting than the suicide. Almost. I mean, not. It made it worse, I guess I would say. But that kind of feeling of that's part of what drives SWAT. I think is how do you deal with a world where that kind of thing happens and you just move on, right?
hmm
Um, that was unnecessarily dark, but I've written well over 30. I've written 36 issues. That's the Eldritch Blue novel. You could argue that's like actually two. But I've like there are other parts of it where I just finished the M Files, which is like a 3-issue arc about Mimi's origins. I don't know if you know the Jehovah's Witnesses, but in
I,
the 80s, yeah,
I'm
in
some
the
little familiar.
in the 80s, they're a fundamentalist Christian group, and in the 80s, they had an urban legend that if you took a Smurf doll and you brought it into a Kingdom Hall, which is what they call their churches, it would come alive and start like biting people and cussing at them and trying to like flee this holy space, right? And they legitimately believed that would happen. So I took that and I had Mimi be Joe's witness, who in her first act of magic makes this Smurf doll come alive in Kingdom Hall and bite an elder. And then it escapes and then finds a Smurfette doll, makes 5 million Smurfs, and then they sort of destroy the city. So it's all over the place, I guess.
Yeah, I love it. I'm just thinking, if your church can turn a small plush doll alive and make it start biting people, you will never have to worry about donations again. People be banging
Yeah.
on the door to see that shit.
Weirdly, there was never on film. It just was one of those urban legends. But
Hmm.
um, I took that, I ran with it, and then so uh, the experience of writing it was I was sitting over on the couch in this very room, and I just started writing, and it just for like a year and a half, this just poured out of me, and I was going at it with 100% intensity, and it was the greatest creative experience of my life, honestly. Like it's never been like that before, and I was actually kind of depressed for a year or two afterwards,
Wow.
because like I'm never gonna get there again, is what it felt like. Maybe I can almost get there, but this is like it was like falling in love for the first time or something like that. So SWAT means a lot to me, and I poured myself out on the page, and when people read it, they really really like it. You know, um, I don't know. It seems like maybe it's not. I guess my concern is it comes across as like kind of just another dumb supernatural cop thing,
Mhm.
and people are like, but it's just not that at all. And I think if you go read the sample, you'll see, that it's not just that. Even the first 7 pages, I think it's there. So
Yeah. Well, that's part of my goal here is that I want to illustrate just how personal this is for you and how different this is from things that resemble the same source material. And there's a lot of stuff out there that's magic related right now because it's just a cool concept people are liking, but that doesn't diminish from the fact that you're doing something that is really genuine, it is very you, and it's got a flavor to it that you're not going to find anywhere else.
I do think, I read a lot of comics. I mean, I probably spend several percentage points of my annual income on comics. And there's a ton of amazing stuff out there, but I have never seen anything that made me think of SWAT. Um, it's it's definitely its own thing for sure. And I think if you read the first issue, you'll see, you know, that this isn't just going to be yet another, you know, comic that you forget about, and once you've read it.
And before we start wrapping up here, I do want to say the last time we talked, you really did a great service to our audience by illustrating just kind of the difficulties you can have in getting a comic off the ground, especially an indie comic, the choices you have to make from a business point of view,
Mhm.
because that's not really the thing that people go into comics wanting to do, but it's just a necessary evil. So I just kind of want to ask, how do tariffs get in the way of making a comic or anything else that's kind of going on right now? How does it become an unseen obstacle?
Well, I mean, if you're printing, most of your cheap printing was from China, and so I mean, there was that. I think I managed to avoid the tariffs on the first batch. Maybe I think I printed it in the United States, but I mean, yeah, I mean, you get your comics and then you get a bill there. The UPS wouldn't let you have it unless you paid another $200 or $500 or whatever. Um, I mean, that's, I guess, kind of over. The chaos of it was even probably worse than the tariffs themselves in a lot of ways, because you just don't know what's ever going to happen. And then I think, the publishers have to worry about what's going to happen. Should we be signing new things, new properties in this environment when Diamond's going under and there's tariffs? And I don't know. It's just been, it feels like it. Now, granted, I guess my perspective basically started with me trying to do SWAT, but it just feels like this has just not been one of the rougher times in comics to get off the ground. Even if sales are up, they're up for people that are getting into the stores, whereas getting to that point has been challenging. And of course, social media is just, everyone's up to their butt and people trying to sell them stuff. And so it's hard to differentiate yourself on that level. Um, yeah, so there are a lot of challenges to it. I guess I still like it better than prose publishing because yeah, it's like you're running your own business. I feel like more like an entrepreneur than a beggar, asking for attention from some agent or something. But it is definitely got hurdles, and it ends up being pretty expensive.
Sure.
So
Well, I want to make sure people have a chance to pick this comic up. So where can they find the comic? Where can they find you on the web and possibly in real life?
well, it's on Kickstarter. Hopefully you have the link. Just Google SWAT on Kickstarter. If you don't, I'm on Justin Koch at bluesky.social. I'm on Facebook under that name. My website's weirdshark.art, where you can see some art for this and another property that I've got developing called Edge of Darkness. And I should post more to it, but that's the website for now. Um, and you can always email me at justincoke@gmail.com, I guess.
Awesome. Well, Justin, thank you so much for meeting with me here. I'm really looking forward to this, and I wish you all the best of luck with this project.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Have yourself a good night.
You too.
I would like to thank Justin for being my guest today, and I would like to thank you for listening. As I said at the beginning of the podcast, there are some things brewing that I will be able to talk about very, very soon, but not just yet. I understand that maybe you'd want to get some details, and I'd be glad to give them as I can give them out. The best way to get that is to go ahead and write to me at bossigpodcast@yahoo.com, or if you have social media, check me out at Aaron Bossig on Blue Sky or Instagram. I really do want to keep in touch, but this is just not the right time. You can subscribe to this show on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon, Apple. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.